looking at the Unit 6 study guide. So I'm looking at number 1. If you remember, number 1 is a mid-segment, which means this segment is parallel to this one, and it is also half of that. So in other words, 3x minus 4 is equal to 8. I'm just going to solve this equation, and we get x is equal to 4. All right, number 2. Let's draw a picture. I'm going to start off with J. Looks like we have Ray, and we have K. So it says J could see K, and then turn 75 degrees and see Ray. And Ray could see J, and then turn 55 degrees and see K. So first thing, the sum of these angles has to equal 180, so that would be 130, which ends up putting this one to be 50 degrees. It wants to know which two were furthest apart, which means we're looking for the longest length, which would be across from the largest angle, which is the 75 degrees, so that means K and Ray are the furthest apart. Okay, number 2, it says two sides of a triangle are given, write an inequality. So remember, when I add any two sides, it has to be greater than the third. So when I add these two, I have to make sure that that third side is less than 19. So 8 plus 11 gives you 19, and when I subtract, I get 3. That makes sure that when I add 8 plus this smaller side, it's greater than the 11. So same thing over here. That means that third side has to be less than 25, but it's going to have to be greater than 17. So when I add, I get it to be greater than the 21. Okay, moving on to number 4, which statement is not necessarily true? It tells me it's a perpendicular bisector, so I at least know I have right angles. I have this is congruent to this. It says AK is congruent to KB. I don't believe that's true. Let's keep checking. J is the midpoint of IK. That one is true. BI and BK, that's true because any point on here is the same distance from the endpoint, and BJK is a right angle. That's true as well. So A is not necessarily true. Okay, moving on to number 5. Where's the center of the largest circle that you could draw inside a given triangle? So if we have a triangle, we're looking for a circle inside of that. So that's the incenter, which comes from the angle bisector. So that would be A. Okay, moving on to number 6. 6 says the length of DE is shown to be 12 units. What other length can you determine from this diagram? If you take a look, this segment is the perpendicular bisector. So that means this point is the same distance from both of those, which means that EF is equal to 12. Okay, moving on to number 7. Which diagram shows that P is the same distance from A, B, and C? So if you remember, that means we're looking for the circumcenter, which comes from the perpendicular bisectors, which would actually be A. If you take a look at this one, this is the altitudes, which goes with the orthocenter. And I'm off the page, I'm looking at the wrong one. Let's go back up here. Which diagram shows a point P equidistant from A, B, and C? So that means I'm looking for the perpendicular bisector, which corresponds with A. Alright, now let's go take a look at number 8. This one wants to know which one is the center of gravity, and I was kind of finishing labeling all of these. If you look at C, this is the median, which is the centroid, which is known as the center of gravity. And just to finish it off, for D, this is the angle bisector, which gives you the incenter, so we know it's not that one. Okay, Okay, moving on to question number 9. Number 9 wants to know which ones cannot be. When I add 5 and 7, I know that's greater than 8. These two would be greater than, and that one would be as well. Really, the quickest way is to add the smaller 2 and make sure it's greater than the third. So if you look at this one, when you add 6 plus 10, it's not greater than 21, so that's the one that cannot be. Okay, on 10, you can draw out the picture, or we also talked about this in class. If the smallest side is 5, then the angle across from it, which would be angle Z, which would be the smallest angle. The next smallest is angle Y, because its side part is 7, and then the last one is going to be angle X. For 11, we have BE is equal to 9, we have GC is equal to 8, and there's a couple things we have to find. So if GC is equal to 8, remember this part is twice this part, which means this piece would be 4. So we know GF is 4, and CF would be 4 plus 8, which is 12. Okay, the other one we know is B to E is 9. So this piece is 2x, this is 1x. So in other words, 2x plus 1x is equal to 9. 3x equals 9, so we end up with x is 3. So B to G is 3, and G to E would be twice that, which is 6. Okay, moving on to number 12. We've been told we have an angle bisector, so that means any point on here is the same distance from the side. So in other words, we have 3n minus 4 equals n plus 8. I'm going to subtract the n, at the same time add the 4. We eventually get n is equal to 6. And the other thing they want to know is FG. So FG is equal to 3 times 6 minus 4, so 18 minus 4 is 14. Okay, 13 is the converse of what we just said. Because this point is the same distance, that means it's the angle bisector. So we have 5x minus 25 equals 2x plus 5. I'm going to subtract the 2x and add the 5. Finally, I end up with x is equal to 10, and I'm looking for TSR, which is the whole angle. So I'm going to go and find this one first. So 2 times 10 plus 5 is 25. That means this angle is 25, so that means the whole angle is 50 degrees. All right, moving on to 14. On 14, the triangles below have midpoints of each side. Study the triangles and determine which triangle is being demonstrated. So in other words, in this one, it's definitely not going through the median. You have angle markings here. That means, again, this is the angle bisector. More importantly, this gives us the incenter. Okay, the next one, it is going through the midpoint and it's perpendicular, so that means this is the perpendicular bisector. More importantly, this is the circumcenter. Okay, 14, it's not going through the middle, but you have right angles, so these are altitudes, which gives you the orthocenter. And finally, on the last one, that one is hitting the middle. So those are the medians, and more importantly, that is called the centroid. Okay, moving on to 15, it wants to know whether the following are perpendicular bisectors, angle bisectors, median, mid-segment, altitude, or none of those. So let's go back here. This segment here is connecting the midpoints of both sides, so this is called the mid-segment. Here you have a perpendicular, and you have it's the middle, so that means this is the perpendicular bisector. The next one you have angle markings to let you know this guy is angle bisecting. And last one, those markings mean none. Okay, for 16, for a triangle, list the respective names of the points of concurrency of the perpendicular bisectors. And really, we just did this right above. Perpendicular bisectors, again, give us the circumcenter. The bisectors of the angles give us the incenter. The medians give us the centroid. And the altitudes give us the orthocenter. Okay, if you take a look at 17, looks like this one's another dealing with the centroid. So let's go over here and look at the picture first. We have mx is equal to 4, so while I'm at it, that means this part is equal to 8. We have m to r is 10, so this piece over here is half of that, so it's 5. And w to r is 20, which lets us know this segment here and this one are 10. So the first thing they're looking for is y to r. We just figured out that. It's 10. Next we need o to m, which was this length in here, which I don't think we figured out. I know, I forgot to label this one right here. Let me go back. M to x is 4. To r is 10. This is the one I forgot. O to y is 18. So this is a 2x, this is a 1x. So we've got 2x plus 1x equals 18. 3x is 18. So x is equal to 6. So this length right here is 6, which means O to m is 12. Okay, z to r, we have that here. 5 plus 10 is 15. And finally, m to w, we had figured that one out as well, and we ended up with 8. Okay, let's go take a look at 18. The last one we didn't draw a picture, but if we want, we can go and draw a picture here. We have P, Q, and T. Angle T is 70. This is 50. So that makes this last angle 60 degrees. Which side is the longest? Which side is the shortest? So the longest will be across from the largest angle, which is 70. So the side across from that one is PQ. The shortest side will be across the smallest angle, which is 50. So that would be segment